Colombia, land of wild jungles, land of Caribbean villages, land of rivers and biodiversity. A humid heat wraps around the Amazon jungle. A condor glides in the silence of the Andes. The ocean crashes against a coast washed by two seas. Welcome to Colombia. Welcome to the land that bears the name of Christopher Columbus. Known as one of the most biodiverse countries on Earth, this is a place where coffee grows among the clouds of the Andes, where a lost city has been sleeping in the jungle, and where a colored river paints the earth like no other place in the world. But let's start from the beginning. Colombia stretches across the northwestern corner of South America and is the only country on the subcontinent to border both the Pacific Ocean and the Caribbean Sea. With nearly 1,900 miles or 3,000 kilometers of combined coastline. But the true backbone of this land is the Andes mountain range, which here splits into three separate branches, generating extreme elevation changes. You go from sea level to over 16,400 feet or 5,000 meters in just a few hundred miles. And with that shift, everything changes. The climate, the vegetation, and life itself. Despite being close to the equator, this land has no real seasons. Time here is not measured by the calendar, but by altitude. There is tropical heat in the lowlands, spring-like weather in cities like Medellín, and near alpine cold above 9,800 feet or 3,000 meters. A perfect example is Bogotá, the capital, suspended at roughly 8,500 feet or 2,600 meters above sea level, one of the highest capitals in the world. Altitude deeply shapes daily life, with cool weather year-round, despite the proximity to the equator. It is precisely this vertical architecture of the territory and this layering of climatic worlds that makes Colombia the second most biodiverse country on the planet after Brazil, but with a much smaller surface area. The country hosts roughly 10% of all animal and plant species on Earth, including over 1,900 bird species, more than any other country on the planet. But the richness of this nation is not only on the surface. From deep within the earth emerge the finest emeralds in the world, as Colombia is also the world's leading producer of this gemstone. And from its hillsides, another treasure grows, less glittering but equally precious: coffee. Colombia is in fact the third largest coffee producer in the world, and in the Eje Cafetero region, it was the plant itself that shaped the land. It carved cultivated hillsides and gave rise to colorful villages and an entire culture, built on precise agricultural rhythms, where time is measured between bloom and harvest. Moving on, the Colombian people are themselves a reflection of this complexity. They are a mosaic of indigenous cultures, Spanish influences, and African heritage, visible in every aspect of daily life. The cuisine changes from region to region, traditions follow different geographies, and rhythms like cumbia and salsa are not simply musical genres, but the living result of this meeting between worlds. Even the name of this nation tells a curious story. Colombia is the only South American country named after Christopher Columbus, and yet the Genoese navigator never set foot on its territory. It was in fact the revolutionary Francisco de Miranda in the 18th century who proposed that name as a symbolic tribute to the entire continent. Colombia, then, is much more than a single nation. It is a vertical country where every foot of altitude reshapes the landscape. And that keeps telling its story to anyone who visits. But now let's explore the most incredible and iconic places in this nation. Cartagena de Indias. Five centuries ago, pirates wanted it at all costs. And the reason is still clear today. Cartagena was the port from which the gold of the New World sailed to Spain, and to defend it, the crown built one of the most imposing fortresses in the Americas, the Castillo de San Felipe. Nearly 7 miles or 11 kilometers of walls still surround the old town, where colonial balconies, heavy with bougainvillea, lean over narrow and colorful streets. But the city is not just an open-air museum. Beyond the walls, the Boca Grande district stretches its skyscrapers along the sea, with a skyline more Miami than Caribbean. There are luxury hotels, beachside clubs, and an energy that looks to the future, not the past. The heat here is constant, dense, almost solid. and the city absorbs it, transforms it into rhythm, color, and movement. Cocora Valley. There is a place in Colombia where palms grow taller than anywhere else on Earth. They are the Quindío wax palms, the national tree, and they reach up to 200 feet or 60 meters in height. They seem out of scale, planted in a landscape of green hills and low fog that feels more Swiss than tropical. This happens because the valley sits at over 5,900 feet or 1,800 meters in elevation, with cool temperatures and constant humidity, creating unique conditions. The trails pass through cloud forests, named so because the clouds drift through them at low altitude, and lead to panoramic viewpoints where these impossible palms dominate the entire valley. Tayrona National Park. The Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta is the highest coastal mountain range in the world. Its peak of 18,947 feet, or 5,775 meters, rises directly from the sea, and at its base stretches Tayrona. This closeness between mountain and ocean compresses different ecosystems into just a few miles. Here you walk through thick jungle, past howler monkeys and iguanas, and suddenly emerge onto bays of transparent water, enclosed by massive granite boulders. There are no roads. You arrive only on foot, along trails that indigenous peoples walked 1,000 years ago. Caño Cristales. For most of the year, it is an ordinary river with clear water over dark rock. But between July and November, something happens. An aquatic plant that lives only here reacts to sunlight and turns the riverbed a deep red. Moss adds the green, sand the yellow, water the blue, and rock the black. 5 colors at once, visible to the naked eye. That is why they call it the River of 5 Colors. Access is limited and controlled, precisely to protect this plant, which does not grow in any other waterway on the planet. Bogotá, 8,860 feet, or 2,700 meters of elevation, 8 million people, and a climate that barely ever climbs above 68 degrees Fahrenheit or 20 degrees Celsius. Bogotá defies every conventional idea of a South American capital. No tropical heat, no palm trees. In fact, it rains often here, the sky is gray, and the city responds with one of the most intense cultural scenes on the continent. The La Candelaria district, the historic center, is a tangle of colonial houses, murals, and universities. Despite the urban density, Bogotá is crossed by several parks and tree-lined avenues, creating green lungs where the city breathes. And then there is Monserrate, a sanctuary at 10,341 feet, or 3,152 meters, from which the city appears as an endless carpet of rooftops wedged between the mountains. San Andrés and Providencia Islands. An archipelago 435 miles or 700 kilometers from the Colombian coast in the middle of the Caribbean Sea. These islands don't even speak Spanish, or rather they don't speak only Spanish. The local language is called San Andrés Creole, and it is a blend of English, Spanish, and African languages, a legacy of the English Puritan settlers and enslaved people who arrived here in the 17th century. San Andrés is the larger and more touristic island, famous for its Sea of Seven Colors. This effect is caused by the varying depth of the seabed and the coral reef underneath. Providencia, on the other hand, has remained nearly untouched. No resorts, few roads, and a coral reef that UNESCO declared a biosphere reserve. They are two islands close together, but certainly two completely different worlds. Medellín. In the 1990s, it was considered one of the most dangerous cities in the world. Today, instead, it is a case study in urban planning. What changed? The infrastructure certainly, but not only that. Medellín built a network of cable cars connecting the poor hillside neighborhoods to the city center. A decision that reduced the isolation of the most marginalized communities, and with it, the violence. The city sits at 4,900 feet, or 1,500 meters in elevation, and enjoys a steady climate, around 72 degrees Fahrenheit, or 22 degrees Celsius, all year long. That is why they call it the City of Eternal Spring. The Comuna 13 neighborhood, once a war zone, is today a route of murals and outdoor escalators, a symbol of a transformation that no one thought possible. Salento. This mountain pueblo has houses painted in bold colors and wooden balconies that hang over uphill streets. But this is not for decoration. It is the Paisa tradition, the culture of the Antiochian settlers who came here in the 19th century looking for fertile land. And they found it. The volcanic soil, combined with the altitude and frequent rain, creates ideal conditions for Arabica coffee. That is why coffee farms surround the village on every side. Here, the beans are still picked by hand, one by one, because the steep slopes do not allow the use of machinery. Tatacoa Desert. This is not actually a real desert. Technically, it is a dry tropical forest, but the visual result is the same. There are stretches of arid land, red and gray rock formations, and almost no vegetation. It lies in the Huila region, squeezed between two mountain ranges that block humidity on both sides. During the day, temperatures rise above 104 degrees Fahrenheit or 40 degrees Celsius. At night, they drop sharply. And it is precisely at night that the total absence of light pollution makes it one of the best stargazing spots in all of Colombia. Leticia. It is the southernmost city in Colombia, and no roads connect it to the rest of the country. You arrive only by plane or by boat. From here, the border with Brazil and Peru is crossed on foot without customs. Around it, the Colombian Amazon begins, with 160 million acres, or 65 million hectares of forest, covering over a third of the national territory. Indigenous communities live along the Amazon River and maintain fishing and farming traditions. The river itself here is several miles wide, and during the rainy season, it floods the surrounding forest, creating a unique ecosystem known as flooded forest. Guatapé. $250 million years ago, magma pushed a granite block weighing 10 million tons toward the surface. Today they call it La Piedra del Peñol, and to reach the top you must climb 745 steps, fitted into a natural crack in the rock. From the summit, you see a maze of green islands and blue water. In the 1970s, in fact, the valley was flooded to build a hydroelectric dam, and an entire village ended up underwater. The town of Guatapé was rebuilt higher up, and the residents began to decorate the facades of their houses with colorful bas-relief panels. Behind those panels, the town is made of steep streets, small plazas overlooking the lake, and the constant sound of music drifting from the bars. La Guajira Desert. This is the northernmost point of South America. Here, rain rarely falls. The wind blows constantly, and the land blends into the sea in an unbroken horizon. In this environment live the Wayuu, the largest indigenous group in Colombia, who have never fully accepted the authority of the Colombian state. The only significant urban center in this area is Macau, a border town with Venezuela where legal and illegal trade have coexisted for as long as anyone can remember. Barranquilla. "4 days. That is how long the carnival of the city lasts, declared an intangible cultural heritage of humanity by UNESCO. But reducing it to a festival would be a mistake. It is in fact the meeting point of 3 cultural legacies: indigenous, African, and Spanish. Cumbia, for instance, was born right here, from the fusion of African drums, indigenous flutes, and European melodies. The city sits at the mouth of the Rio Magdalena, the most important river in Colombia. And this position made it for centuries the country's main river and commercial port. The city is hot, loud, chaotic. It has no colonial architecture or mountains, but it has a unique energy that you can feel in the air. Villa de Leyva. The main plaza of this town measures 150,700 square feet, or 14,000 square meters. There is only white stone, beaten by the sun, without a single tree. The colonial buildings around it have not changed since 1572 because the government banned any architectural modification. Just minutes from the plaza, the Convento del Santo Ecce Homo, founded in 1620 by the Dominicans, still preserves its original floors made of stone and animal bone. Its cloister, surrounded by stone columns and arches, encloses a garden that has been growing in silence for 4 centuries now. The Lost City. It was discovered in 1972 by looters searching for gold in the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta. But this city had already existed for 700 years before Machu Picchu. Its name is Tayrona, and reaching it takes 4 days of hiking through the jungle, crossing rivers and steep climbs. There is no other way. Those who arrive here find 169 stone terraces emerging from the vegetation. The Tayrona people built them around 800 AD using the natural slopes to drain rainwater. Today it is the Kogi, their direct descendants, who guard the site and decide when visitors may enter. Chocó. Here, it rains almost every day. Up to 512 inches or 13,000 millimeters of water fall each year, making it one of the rainiest regions on the planet. Chocó faces the Pacific Ocean, covered by dense, nearly impenetrable rainforest. Roads are few, which is why people travel by boat along rivers that serve as natural highways. The population is largely of African descent, and communities live in stilt houses along the riverbanks, adapting every aspect of life to the rhythms of the tides and the rains. Between July and October, humpback whales arrive from the south to breed in the warm waters off the coast. Rosario Islands. "27 coral islands, 1 hour by boat from Cartagena." The warm water and shallow seabed have fostered a coral reef with over 150 species of fish. The archipelago has been a national marine park since 1977, when intensive fishing was destroying the corals. Some islands are tiny, barely wider than a rocky outcrop. Others are home to fishing communities that live without running water, collecting rainwater in cisterns. Tourism has changed a lot, but on the more remote islands, the rhythm remains the authentic rhythm of the sea. Barichara. Every street here is stone, and every wall is rammed earth. Barichara is built almost entirely with materials taken from the ground it stands on. The technique is based on raw earth, compressed in wooden molds, layer after layer. It is not an aesthetic choice, but a practical one, because stone and red earth were the only materials available in the 18th century. The result is a rare visual uniformity, with ochre tones, terracotta roofs, and silence. Cali. A city of 2.5 million people with a constant heat that stays above 86 degrees Fahrenheit or 30 degrees Celsius all year long. Social life takes place on the street, among crowded sidewalks and music pouring out of open venues. It is here that salsa became a collective identity, arriving from the Caribbean in the 1960s and transformed into a style of its own, with a rapid footwork that exists nowhere else. In the San Antonio neighborhood on the hills above the center, there are colorful colonial houses and a view that embraces the entire valley. The downtown area instead stretches out flat, with wide streets and tropical trees, where people stop to talk at any hour. Palomino. The exact point where the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta meets the Caribbean Sea. On one side, the highest coastal mountain range in the world. On the other, long waves and dark sand. Palomino was a fishing village, nothing more. Then travelers discovered what they call tubing. You sit on an inflated inner tube and float for miles down the river, from the jungle all the way to the ocean. The village grew around this experience, but it remains small, with no hotel chains and no paved roads. Jardín. A mountain village, just over 14,000 people, and no building taller than 2 stories. A local law prevents it, to protect the colonial character of the center. The facades are painted in bright colors, the balconies overflow with flowers, and the main plaza is still the place where people gather to talk. Overlooking the plaza itself stands the Basilica Minor, a stone church whose Gothic spires seem out of place among tropical mountains, and yet it has stood there for over a century. Around it, the hills are covered in coffee plantations, and the green is so dense that the town seems to have grown inside the vegetation. This village has no famous monuments. Its strength is the whole, a rare balance between landscape, architecture, and daily life that remains intact. Los Llanos. A third of Colombia is flatland. The Llanos Orientales stretch east of the Andes and are flat, boundless, all the way to the Venezuelan border. During the rainy season from April to November, the rivers overflow and turn the savanna into a vast sheet of water. In the dry season instead, the grass turns yellow, and animals gather around the remaining pools. And it is precisely then that this place becomes one of the best spots in South America for wildlife watching. Capybaras by the hundreds, anacondas, caimans, deer, and over 300 bird species, all visible at close range. Finlandia. Unlike nearby Salento here, tourists are still few. It is a village in Colombia's coffee region at 6,200 feet or 1,900 meters in elevation, with colorful houses and wooden balconies, but without tourist crowds. The local economy revolves mainly around coffee. The main plaza is small, intimate, and the terrace on the edge of the village opens up a view over the entire valley below. Near the town, the Mirador Colina Iluminada offers an open view of the Cocora Valley, where the wax palms up to 200 feet, or 60 meters tall, pierce through the fog. This little town has a slow rhythm, coffee that you drink in the plaza, and just enough silence to lose track of time. Mompox. For centuries, the Magdalena River was the only route connecting the Caribbean coast to the interior of Colombia. And Mompox was its mandatory stop. Gold, goods, and travelers all passed through here. Then commercial navigation shifted to another branch of the river, and the town was left behind. But the Magdalena still flows right beside it, slow and wide. The 17th century churches, the stone arcades, and the goldsmith workshops that still craft filigree are the same as 300 years ago. The streets empty out in the afternoon because the heat here sets its own rhythm. And when the sun goes down, the Church of Santa Barbara, with its yellow bell tower, becomes the point where all of Mompox seems to converge. Minca. (1,970 feet or 600 meters in elevation and 20 minutes on a dirt road from Santa Marta. That difference in altitude alone is enough to change everything. The coastal heat disappears, the air turns cool, and the vegetation thickens. Minca is a village of few streets, clinging to the first foothills of the Sierra Nevada. Water here flows everywhere. There are waterfalls, streams, and natural pools among the rocks. Coffee farms spread across the surrounding slopes, while cacao grows alongside in the same soil. Those who climb up here usually are looking for a break from the coast, and they find it quickly. Las Lajas Sanctuary. A bridge of 164 feet, or 50 meters, spans the canyon of the Guatapé River, and at its center, embedded in the rock, rises a Gothic church. The sanctuary was built directly into the canyon wall at a depth of 246 feet, or 75 meters. Legend says that in 1754, an indigenous woman and her deaf-mute daughter took shelter here during a storm, and the girl spoke for the first time, pointing to an image of the Virgin that had appeared on the stone. That image is still there, and no one has ever figured out what it was painted with. As we conclude this visual journey through Colombia, we have traveled from the Andean mountain ranges to the Amazon jungles, exploring together not just places, but also stories that make every corner of this land unique. We hope the images and stories shared have enriched your knowledge and sparked the desire to personally explore the extraordinary variety of this country.